She said it in front of everyone. Every lord, every lady, every noble house that had sent their daughters to the selection in silk and hope, they all heard it. The cartographer's daughter, plain wool dress, ink on her fingers, looked the most powerful man in the kingdom directly in the eye and said it without flinching. I would sooner bind myself to a beast than stand at your side, your majesty. The gallery went silent, the way a held breath goes silent. Caleb Voss, alpha king of the Vayreth pack, did not move. He stood at the center of the great hall in his dark riding coat, 40 daughters of 40 noble houses arranged behind him, and he looked at Sarah Ashford the way a man looks at something he has never encountered before and cannot yet name. Nobody refused the Alpha King. Nobody had ever refused the Alpha King. Sarah had decided at approximately 3 that morning that she would be the first. She had her reasons. Her mother had been chosen by a powerful man once, chosen for her beauty, her bloodline, her family's northern territory, chosen and kept and valued right up until the moment she was not. Sarah had been 9 years old the night her father came home without her mother's things, and she had understood then, with the cold clarity that only children possess, exactly how this story ended.
You were chosen. You were used. You were set down. She had spent 15 years making herself too useful to discard and too difficult to want. And she had walked into that gallery this morning with no intention of walking out as anyone's chosen anything. What she had not accounted for was him. Cale Voss stepped forward. 1 step. Slow and deliberate. A beast, he said quietly.
His voice was low, unhurried, the voice of a man who had never once needed to raise it to be heard. You'd rather a beast. I would rather, Sarah said, keeping her chin up and her voice steady, anything that does not intend to value me until it doesn't. Something moved behind his amber eyes. Not anger, something more dangerous than anger. Interest. You think that's what I do? I think that's what powerful men do, yes! The 40 houses were absolutely silent. Someone near the back had stopped breathing entirely. Cale looked at her for a long moment, then said, very quietly, so that only she could hear it, "Then I suppose I have something to prove." He stepped back. He turned to the assembled gallery, and in front of every lord and lady and disappointed noble family, the Alpha King of the Vayreth pack said 4 words that no one had ever heard from his mouth. The selection is postponed. He came the next morning, not with guards, not with ceremony. He arrived at Sarah's gate on horseback, alone, in a plain dark coat with no sigil, no crown, nothing that announced what he was. He dismounted before she could shut the door. I'm not here as your king. Then leave as something else, she replied. He did not leave. He stood at her gate in the early cold and said, Your roof is missing 3 shingles on the eastern slope. The next snowfall will come through. Sarah stared at him. I noticed on the way in, Cale said, already moving toward the ladder propped against the cottage wall, as though the conversation were settled. She watched, speechless, as the Alpha King of the Vayreth pack climbed onto her roof and fixed her shingles. He came back the following day with a split axle on her father's old supply cart that she hadn't mentioned to anyone. He came the day after that in the middle of a snowstorm, knocked once, handed her a bundle of dried herbs she had been unable to find at the lower market, and left without a word before she could thank him or argue about it. On the 4th day, she opened the door before he could knock. You're doing this on purpose. I'm fixing things that need fixing. You're trying to change my mind. He looked at her steadily,
snow melting in his dark hair, amber eyes entirely calm. "I'm trying to show you what I do with things I value, Miss Ashford. I maintain them. I don't set them down." The pole behind her breastbone, the one she had been calling a draft and a coincidence and a trick of cold air, pulled tight and warm and refused to be called anything else. She made him wait on the step while she got her coat. They walked the eastern boundary together in the cold, and she showed him the border markers her father had placed, the ones the new stewards had quietly moved 3 feet into Ashford land over the years. Small thefts no one had thought she'd notice. He listened. Not politely, carefully, the way her father had listened, as though what she knew was not a tool, but a window into who she was.
By the time they returned, the light was going blue at the edges. "You should go," she said. "I should." He didn't move. "Are you still certain about the beast?" The question was quiet. Underneath, it was something unguarded, something that cost him more than he would admit. Sarah looked at this man who had fixed her roof and found her herbs and stood in a snowstorm outside her door and listened to her talk about stolen border markers for 2 hours. "I'm certain," she said slowly, "that you're nothing like what I expected." The corner of his mouth moved. "That's not a no. It's not a yes either. I'll take it." He stepped back, easy and unhurried. "I'll come tomorrow. I might not open the door. Then I'll fix something outside it," he said. "And wait." But on the 8th day, he did not come, and Sarah hated how quickly she noticed. She hated how often she looked toward the road. She hated that the silence felt heavier than his footsteps ever had. By evening, a royal messenger arrived, not with a letter, but with a warning. The noble houses had gathered against Cale. They claimed the Alpha King had weakened himself for a woman beneath his station. They claimed Sarah was manipulating him. And worse, they claimed they knew exactly how to bring back the beast everyone feared. The messenger lowered his voice. "The old law says, if an Alpha King abandons his strength for love, the curse awakens." Sarah frowned. "What curse?" The messenger looked afraid. The beast inside him. That night, Sarah finally understood. The stories were not metaphors. They were warnings. The Alpha King's blood carried an ancient curse, a beast bound beneath his skin, a monster that would rise if he lost control. And for 7 days, he had been choosing patience over power, kindness over instinct, her over himself. On the 7th night, she found him, standing alone at the edge of her land. The wind was violent. Snow covered his shoulders, and his amber eyes were changing. Not completely, not yet, but enough. Sarah stopped. "Cale?" He turned, and for the first time she saw the thing everyone feared, the beast beneath the king. "I told you," he said quietly. "I would become whatever you needed me to be. Not this." His jaw tightened. "This is what everyone thinks I am." "No," she stepped closer. "This is what everyone decided you were." The beast inside him stirred. The ground beneath his feet cracked slightly. "Sarah, go." It was the first time she had heard fear in his voice. Not fear for himself, for her. And somehow, that hurt more. "You fixed my roof," she whispered. He looked at her. "You carried my father's broken cart." Another step. "You listened when everyone else ignored me." Another. "You spent 7 days proving you were not a man who would set me down." She reached for his hand. "Even when claws began to form beneath his skin, you don't become a beast because you love someone." The storm went silent. Slowly, painfully, the monster inside him faded, and Cale Voss stood before her again. Not a king, not a beast, just a man. On the morning of the 8th day, Sarah opened the door before he could knock. He was already there, sitting on the step in the dark with his forearms on his knees, entirely unbothered by the cold or the hour or the absurdity of an alpha king sitting on a cottage doorstep at first light. She stood in the doorway and looked at him, and understood with sudden, dizzy clarity that she had already lost the argument she'd been having with herself.
"You said you'd become a beast," she said quietly.
I said whatever it took. His amber eyes found hers. If a beast is what proves it to you, I'll wear the title. I've been called worse. I don't want a beast, Sarah admitted. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. What do you want? She thought of her mother. She thought of 15 years of being useful and careful and never, not once, allowing herself to be kept. I want, she said, to not be set down. Cale rose from the step, slow and deliberate. He was close enough that she could see the snow caught in his dark hair, the steady patience in his eyes, the man beneath the king who had spent 7 days stripping every layer of power and ceremony away to stand in front of her as nothing more than himself. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're not. Starting now, if you'll let me. The bond behind her breastbone sang low. Sarah Ashford, who had walked into a royal gallery to refuse a king and walked back out with her dignity intact and her heart entirely lost, rose onto her toes and let herself, finally, be kept. If this story hit you somewhere real, smash that like button and subscribe. Sarah and Cale's story continues next week. Drop a comment. Would you have refused him?